Bureaucrats do not create bureaucracy. Hey, I'm Chuck, the bureaucrat, and I've told you before that bureaucracy springs from the competition for resources that can be arbitrarily distributed but have to be justified. And today, I'm going to show you an interesting way that bureaucracy expands. Suppose there's some kind of expensive project that every command wants, but there simply isn't enough money to pay for them all. Some examples of this are military construction, major weapon systems, special training, and some types of highly skilled personnel. So how is the bureaucracy going to prioritize these projects? Well, they're going to have some kind of board. They'll solicit proposals from the field. And here we have 4 commands: orange, blue, yellow, and gray. And each of them are going to submit their top 3 projects. Then some group will rank order these projects and draw a cut line based on available resources. Here we can only afford to fund 4 projects. Now this seems like a minimal amount of bureaucratic BS, right? But watch how the bureaucracy expands. Notice how the orange command did not have a project above the cut line. What do you think they think of that? Obviously, those bureaucrats at headquarters are doing things wrong. And so the orange command is going to apply one of 2 techniques, most likely in this order. In the first technique, they're going to attack the criteria. Now, if the criteria for ranking projects is vague or nebulous, they're going to demand more transparency and documentation of the prioritization process, and that will generate its own sort of bureaucracy. If the prioritization criteria is already well documented, the orange command will argue that it was applied improperly, and the process will start to bog down checking everybody's math. Now this will go on until the orange command eventually gets at least one of their projects above the cut line. Now, I want you to take a second and think about what's happened here from the perspective of the blue command. They had a project above the cut line, but now they don't. So trust me, they are about to enter the fray. This kind of wrangling over how to prioritize projects can go on for a very long time. More and more people get dragged into the process. Conferences get bigger and bigger and bigger. Analysis gets more complicated, and the documents that tell people what to do get higher and more detailed. If this solution ever stabilizes, it's usually because there's a strong, lasting alliance between the headquarters and one of the larger, more powerful commands. Essentially, smaller commands with low-ranking generals get squeezed out of the process. But don't worry, they are going to generate even more bureaucracy by turning to the second technique. If you can't win by going through the process, you go around the process. Now, this can happen a bunch of ways, but I'm going to focus on one of the more straightforward scenarios. Suppose there's a brand new 1-star who's taking command of one of these small disenfranchised commands, like the blue command. He schedules an office call with a 4-star who sits above this process. He pitches the desperate need for this long-neglected project. And the 4-star nods along sympathetically, and he says, well, if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. And wonder of wonders, the 1-star just happens to have a memo for the 4-star to sign directing that project be funded. And just like that, the 1-star's staff shows up at the next meeting to prioritize projects with their memo in hand and says, you have been directed to fund this project. I know. This sounds like commanders getting stuff done without getting bogged down in all that bureaucracy. But watch what happens as soon as the other commands figure out what's going on. Now remember, you can only fund 4 projects. So as soon as that memo was signed, the cut line moved up and some command lost a project. And then there is a stampede to the 4-star's door. Suddenly everybody is going around the process because if you can get one of those memos signed, you have locked in your funding. And don't forget that every single time one of those memos is signed, the pool of resources shrinks and the competition in that legacy process becomes more desperate. Now, this second technique of going around the process will generate its own kind of bureaucracy. It doesn't take long for the 4-star to get fed up with this parade of supplicants all pitching their projects. So what he'll do is he'll turn to somebody he trusts and say, "Hey, Richie, gather up all these proposals, rank order them, and make a recommendation on which ones I should support." And now you have two virtually identical processes. Of course, nobody tells the original process to stop. In fact, all that wrangling over how the process was supposed to work solidified the existence of this process. Plus, sometimes that rank-ordered list that this process is generating comes in handy if funds suddenly become available. Now, in one regard, the Pentagon is just littered with the debris of this kind of phenomenon. If you know what to look for, you start to see it everywhere. But the most glaring examples of this tend to collapse under their own weight in about a year or two. Mainly, this is because all the parties get frustrated. The folks who are doing the original process are frustrated because they have to do a ton of work but doesn't get used. The folks running the new process quickly realize that they're doing something that's duplicative, and they start to notice people trying to go around them. And the commands are frustrated because they're not even really sure who they're supposed to be talking to. And this is just one of scores of patterns that are driving the Pentagon. Watch this video to see how to control the flow of information no matter who you are.